not stuck here. The cops won't bother me. My fork seal is leaking. Honda Shadow from 1985 is leaking. And this is the dust cap. And oftentimes you can reuse the dust cap, but this one's cracked. On the actual fork leg, you can see there's oil residue, and that's how you can tell that your fork seals are leaking. Just received my fork seals for the Honda Shadow. This is the dust caps you're gonna need. The thing you have to keep in mind that there is a up and a down. Usually if there's writing on the fork seal itself, that means that's the up part. And if there's no writing, that's the down part. I'm gonna need to remove the entire front end. And it's just enough to kind of push up a bit. This is a pinch bolt, and you're just gonna take a wrench. And this might be on pretty tight on there. Don't have to remove the brake pads or anything, but we do need to remove these two bolts. Piece of string and attach it. Also, I'm gonna have to remove this up. You don't have to be crazy about it. Let's get this brake caliper out. It's such a long cable, I can rest it on the ground for now. Left side, there's the speedo cable. You just kind of pull it aside. And after you get the brake calipers out, you're going to just undo this. This is the axle. You might need a breaker bar, and I've already broken it, so it's easy to remove. But we're also going to lube this axle. Put it up a little bit on my jack, and that relieves some of the pressure from it, so I should be able to remove the axle. There we go. And there's the axle. This is a 35-year-old axle, so it potentially could have some spots that you need to work on, but this one seems fine. We're just going to re-grease it. Ready to see if we can get this wheel off, and there we go. When you get the wheel off, even if you're going to be just changing the tire, you should put some grease here, and on the other side clean it up and put some grease in there. I always like to see if these bearings are in good shape. This is my speed sensor. You should grease it as well. There is some new grease in there. The fender, and you just there's two bolts on each side of the fork. Just slide it down. Remember, it's still got the cable from the caliper. So on top of the fork, there's these plates here, and you can get a flat screwdriver and just kind of pull them off. It's just a clip that makes it look nicer. And now I should be able to put a hex bolt in here, and this is just a brace, and it helps to do it before you remove the fork. So there we go. This is like really high quality steel. I'm so used to plastic parts on Japanese bikes, but this one's like metal everywhere. If you get into this point and you have forks here, there's a bolt down here that you need to loosen. The problem is it's so tight that you need to have something, otherwise the fork just bends. And it's better to be doing it when the wheel is actually in it. But if you got to this point, just put the axle in here, and that's going to help you remove the tire. So just kind of put it on, and all you have to do is loosen it. Don't remove this bolt. There we go. And it's pretty tight. I've already loosened it, and on the other side, just kind of loosen it a bit. You don't want to loosen it too much, otherwise oil will start to pour out. The bolt here, it's a large one. I think it's a 50. There we go. And just kind of loosen it up. And you don't have to remove it. Loosen this bolt here. So you probably will find the right size. Here we go. This was actually easier to loosen. There we go. Just going to put it back in. So on top of each fork there is a plastic cap. Remove it. And that's also where there's a a shredder valve. There's a shredder valve over here that you can put air. I actually have never used these systems. They're very old. It's the same sort of system. It's a cap. Then I'm going to take a screwdriver, just put it in there, and very little air. This fork is so rusted in the joints that it's very difficult to remove. So what I found is, I'm just going to take the key out just to make sure that I'm put something like this, and then using a soft rubber mallet, you're going to have to hit it down, twist it, and move it down. And here we go. It's really rusty. That is the reason it's not moving down. This 1985 fork is so difficult to remove. This is where the triple tree is, and you can see it's all rusted. So once we remove it, we're going to have to really clean this up, and it's stuck even now, so be very gentle trying to remove it. The soft mallet, screwdriver, just pushing it in. That seems to work fairly well. You might want to consider is tightening this now that we have the fork all the way down, because we have to loosen this bolt to remove the internals of the fork. And I am going to suggest that it's going to be much harder to remove once it's off the fork. So I'm going to tighten this momentarily, loosen this cap. If your fork is having a really big difficulty removing it, you could remove this plate and just use a screwdriver to push away the clamp, the triple clamp, just a little bit, enough to kind of get out. I have my fork down here. I tighten this bolt, and it's enough room. I can put my socket and just gently loosen this. And it might take some time. You have to really hang on to the handlebars and make sure that the bike does not fall. Put some oil on the fork to see if I could slide it out easier. Side here, we're going to just push it down, and it'll come down. You just have to be patient with it. Push it down, and there we go. So here is the fork. This is the right one. The lower part of the legs, there is a R over here, and the left one's got an L. Both the forks on the ground. Remember, there is a right and a left. Remember, at the very bottom here, there's a bolt that you should loosen of the fork leg. And also remember that this top bolt needs to be loosened, and we're going to be removing it completely now. I'm just going to loosen this bolt here and just remove it entirely. And there we go. And there is also a washer to this bolt, so don't lose it. There is oil, and you could, if you wanted, you could just like remove a lot of it just by doing that. So in addition to remove the bolt at the bottom here, removing this bolt, you're also going to have to remove and loosen this bolt here. And this one, when you remove it, all the oil will come out much faster, so it's kind of like a bleeding sort of system. Alright, at this point you have the top of the fork. There's a spring in here, so when you put an extension here, and this is already loosened because we were smart enough this time to loosen it while it was still on the bike. But remember, you need to cover this. This is a little bit dangerous because, and sometimes I screw it up. And I'm not even using a sort of wrench or anything to pull it out, but when you're pulling it, you need to make sure you put pressure on the top, and up on the top and put pressure. And there we go. Not too bad. So let's go ahead, and this one is the left one. So there's the top cover, and this is a shredder valve up here. There is it's like I actually have never seen this. This is kind of really interesting. It's a PVC pipe inside. First, before I remove the spring, there's a spacer. Very important, on top of the spring. And then pull out the spring. There we go. And there's going to be oil that's going to be pouring out. And I like to keep it all in one place. And here comes the internals, which is the bottom part Let's put that aside. It's always got a little oil. So this is the fork seal on the section that was actually leaking. Take a flat screwdriver and lift up on the fork seal. I'm not too worried about damaging it, but I try not to, because you know I have a new kit for it, so it will work well as well. And just kind of go around. There we go. Put it aside. We'll look at this. It's actually really dirty. There's actually a lot of crud in here. This is kind of interesting. No wonder this fork seal is leaking. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult for you guys to. And I can take the screwdriver and you'll see there's actually, look at this. That is just chunks of rust on here. That is just insane. I've never seen. No wonder this is, oh man, this is so dirty. This is going to be actually difficult to remove because it's just filled with corrosion in here. And the key is to get your screwdriver in the back here and try your best to remove it. There's a part that's open. I mean, this is just insane. There's like so much corrosion here. Push this one out. All right, I think I used 2 screwdrivers to get this thing out, and it's still on there, but now, there we go. It took a while. I didn't show you guys most of the struggle, but let's go ahead and remove this. And this clip has seen better days. I think I might have an extra one. I'm going to bend it to, I'm going to make sure I bend this the right way, but this is all completely rusted out. I don't even know if I should be reusing this. Now, we are going to be removing the fork seal. The fork seal actually sits on the inside here, and it is stuck in there. It's just put in by using a special tool. So, but this is completely messed up. The way to remove it is you take the 2 halves, the bottom and the top, and you just do this. And it slowly, after you remove that retaining clip, it should come out. But because of this is so, it was so tight and full of rust, this might take a little bit more work. Okay, here we go. So there are the 2 parts separated. Is this piece of rubber here that causes all the debris, and it is by far the worst shape fork seal I've ever seen, and it's kind of incredible. So let's go ahead and just put this aside. So what we have here is the fork seal, and you see all of this crud everywhere. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but this is rust. This is rust, debris, water, corrosion, full of crud everywhere. And this is pretty much a throwaway. There's no way you can fix it. This is just, yeah. You shouldn't reuse these fork seals anyway. There's like a limited lifespan, but normally I've never seen anything quite in as bad of shape. It's just kind of amazing. So this is in really bad shape too. This is the clip that took me a while to remove. It is full of rust. All right, we are going to be removing the dust cap, and this is the one on the right. And the dust cap, there is some damage, and there's actually quite a bit of dirt. Here's another thing, like this is fairly damaged, so it is completely corroded. Even this one, and this one's not the one that's leaking. This is getting so difficult to remove because it's all rusted out here on the sides. So the metal clip is here, so I have to figure out a way to get it out. Doesn't matter, just gotta get this thing out. Just took hours and hours to get rid of this thing. It is still not in there. This clip, which is this is the the old one. That clip belongs to the other fork, but it is completely rusted out, and I've been trying to get it out for hours. It is still not out, but I can now get it up here, and it's out. I mean, don't think that this did not take a long time, guys. First of all, it broke, and it's completely rusted out. The fork seal out, all you have to do is kind of pound it like this. And the problem is it's all bent. So there we go. Things that are disturbing about the right fork is that there's some pretty big holes here. And I never even noticed that, but it's a little bit hard because I have my hands are dirty. It looks like almost a drill coming from the side. So make sure that you clean all of these things. And I'm going to try and find a different clip. I don't want to reuse the same clips, but I'm taking some steel wool and I'm going through and really trying to clean up the insides. I think it might be overkill to like try and like polish all of this up. These were the difficult things to remove because of rust. They're completely corroded. I don't recommend reusing these. I'm going to search to see if I can find some clips that are a different style, because these are a little bit over-engineered. In a way, it's nice that Honda took the time to and this is like hard steel, so not even a soft steel that I usually see in bikes. Even at the FJR 1300 that I did the fork seals, the clips were much inferior quality in steel than these. Ready to start putting the lower fork, and this is the lower of the Honda Shadow, and at the bottom, of course, is where this bolt will go. But there's a couple of things that we need. This is the internals, and there's a spring here, and the bolt actually kind of goes here, and then there's another part inside here. This is the internals that goes here. So this little bit kind of sits here at in the inside of the fork, and it holds the nut to the internals. You have your washer there. Look at the bottom of your top part of the fork. There's this pretty large hole. If you slide this here, that's where it sits. All right. We have a bushing here, and then we have another bushing. Just look and inspect these to make sure that these are in good shape. It's usually like the color that you're looking for, but if you're unsure, just get like a whole rebuild kit and just replace these. And on top of this, we're going to have our washer that we're going to drop in. And then you take the upper and the lower, and you just kind of push them in, and it's sitting there, and the lower kind of put together. Except we have this contraption and the bolt. And what you do is you slide this and you drop it in here, and hopefully you can reach the little washer. And you can see by holding the fork down like this, the gravity actually pushes everything together if you've done it correctly. If the bolt is not threading, I would just consider doing all of this again. And if I lift up on the fork, it's not coming apart. So now we're ready to slide in our fork seal. You might want to put some oil all over it and make sure that you know which side is up. Normally the right-hand side is up, and the bigger slot here is down towards the oil. And what you're going to be doing is just sliding this carefully on top of the fork, and there we go, and then just sliding it down. At this point, all you have to do is bring the fork seal all the way and push it as much as you can down. And now at this point, we need to drive this down. And normally what happens is that to drive this down, you need a fork seal driver. I don't have one. A lot of people don't have fork seal drivers, and they make something out of PVC where you can just hit it down. the whole point is to hit it down evenly so it goes down into the recesses of the fork. And afterwards we have a clip that we're going to be putting on. It's a safety clip. And afterwards we have the dust seal. For a fork seal driver, what I usually should do is go to Home Depot and kind of measure things out. Every fork is different, but what I'm using, generally I'll use like something like this, and then I'll hammer this top or the bottom, depending what I want to drive in. And what I'll be using for the Honda Shadow is this. It's slightly different, and I picked it up at Home Depot. It's a 1/4, 1 inch, 1/4 adapter. It's like PVC. And what you do with this is slide this down, and this touches the fork seal, so it can't be on the metal part, of course, because you just have to push the seal down. And the way I bang it in is I actually have 2 pieces of PVC, and this one is what I've used for a lot of bikes, and this kind of lets you clamp down on this, and just by doing this I can kind of slam it down. The fork seal is in here. You just have to look inside, and the seal is pretty far down. The only thing I would do is clean up around it, because sometimes the PVC leaves some droppings and you want this to be pretty clean. Now just make sure that the seal is past that retaining clip, and then you put the retaining clip on top. Both of the seals are in, and you should be able to move this freely. And what I would do is try and clean everything around it, make sure that the seal is in there. And next step is the safety clip, and the safety clip holds the seal in there so it doesn't come out. Let's tighten this before we start doing anything else. You don't have to tighten it very much, but and this side bolt is only a 10mm. You don't want to over tighten this. Our bottom parts of the fork are bolted on. The internals are bolted, so they're not going to be falling off. I can turn the fork upside down and they'll be fine. Well, looks like in DC we're getting some major storms, and I'm still working on the Honda Shadow. So definitely not going to be riding anytime soon. I just got my retaining clips. These took a while. If you guys recall, the retaining clips on the existing forks were completely rusted out, and I had to order 2 of these. The part number is 51447461003. They're from another bike, but they should still work. If you use some of these pliers, they're not pliers, they're like circlips pliers. They're meant to kind of push it together. They got these little tiny little things, and you put them in the holes of the clips. It has to go into that groove. And there we go. The clip is in there. We put it in there. It's in the groove, but just to make sure, I'm going to slide our fork seal driver, and we're just going to be pushing it down. And you heard that snap? That's the retaining ring going into that groove. Very important. So here's our dust seal. You're just going to slide it down, and I have some fork oil on it just to help slide. Our seal, we have a retaining ring, and now this is the dust cap, and all you do is kind of push it on each side. After you get this done, you're pretty much done with the fork seal. So this is the oil I'll be using. I'm using 15 weight fork oil. There is 20 weight fork oil, but it's not recommended. 20 is just too heavy. It'll be too stiff. Some people actually use it, but I'm going to use 15, which is 5 more than the stock one. I believe the stock one might be even be 7.5 or 10, but 15 is going to be good. And one bottle is 1 liter, and each it's 1 quart, 1 liter. So you should be using half for one fork and one for half. So this should be enough to do the entire job. So this might be a little bit hard to see, but I have a shish kebab stick, and I have measured from here, the very bottom, all the way to the tape. And I put a piece of tape here, and from that to that is 7.5 inches. And the way we're going to measure the correct amount of oil is we're going to stick this on the actual fork from the top to the bottom, and this part is going to be hitting the oil. So once this part hits the oil, I know I have the correct amount of oil. The way I'm going to measure it, I have the stick and it's 7.5 inches. I'm going to make sure that I put this and I'm going to fill the oil up to here. This is the fork spring. We're going to install it. There is a direction. The tightly wound spring is towards the bottom, and if you look at the top part, it's less wound. Take the oil and I'm going to pour equal amounts of oil into these two bottles, and the reason I'm doing that is that even though I'm measuring with the shish kebab stick, this is another way of measuring. So it's pretty much even, and I still have some oil in here. The internal is in here, and I'm just going to take a funnel. I'm going to put it on. That way I don't spill anything. I make sure that I cleaned it as well. Carefully hold it, and then I'm just going to pour it in slowly. You're going to be pumping this up and down. Go ahead and put the other fork oil on the other one. Just gonna drop it all in here. Let this drain out. The spring should be there already. If you don't have it in there, it doesn't matter. You can just drop the spring in there. Now I'm actually looking at the oil level. I see the oil level in the leg, but we're still needing to put a little bit. Now we're going to be moving this up and down, and it gets harder. It gets a little bit harder with the oil to pump this up and down. So, but you need to do this to bleed out the system, and I'll do this quite a bit. So if you guys remember the shish kebab stick, which is measured at 7 inches, what I'm going to be doing is, with the spring in there, it's 7.5 inches, and I'm looking down to see if it touches the oil, and it doesn't yet, so I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Not yet. And I'm actually looking down and looking at it to see if it touches. Just a little bit more. Okay. And yep, that's it. So we have the correct amount of oil in here. The only thing left over to do in this fork is just to kind of pump it up and down several times with the everything in there, and the oil will kind of bleed. You know, you want to get all the air out, so you pump it up and down. So 1 liter, 1 quart, 1 liter, 1 bottle of fork oil will do for both of these forks. So the more you do this, the tighter it gets. So it's very important to just grab a cloth or something that doesn't have oil. And I'll do this for like 20 or 30 times, just so everything gets worked out. One of the things that happened when I removed the forks, if you guys remember, there was no spacer on top, but you need a washer on top. I'm not going to install it, but keep that in mind. I have my spring already in here, and the spring is all the way at the bottom. The fork is compressed down. The thing I'm going to be doing now is just dropping this washer in there. Make sure that it's correctly set, and it's so if you just kind of hit it like that, it should go in. Now it's in there. I'm going to put the spacer, and normally there's another spacer, or not another spacer, sorry. There's another washer up here on the top according to the fork diagrams, but whoever did this did not do it, so I'm not going to install it. But normally there should be a washer here. If you have one, you might want to do that. But because the little cup here, it actually kind of sits pretty well in the PVC pipe, and it's not going to go anywhere, there is no reason to put it. If you had a stock spacer, you might have to use the washer. So now what we're going to do, after you pump this up several times, is you're going to raise the forks up, and it takes a little bit more pressure because it's got oil in there, and you need to kind of push it all the way up as much as you can. There we go. So now we just have to push down a little bit. Now the key is to put this on, use your hand and just kind of push down and twist it enough that it will thread just a little bit. And you could use the wrench and everything to kind of get past that. So raise up on the fork leg, just kind of push it down and just see if you can twist it on there. So now all we have to do is tighten this, and we don't have to tighten it fully, but I'm just going to get as much as I can, and then when we get it on the bike, we'll fully tighten it up. Alright, so that's pretty much it. I'm not going to tighten it fully. Make sure you put that fender before you put on the front wheel. That is the fork seals on the 1985 Honda Shadow. As you can tell, it's not leaking anymore. I pumped it up several times. There's no leakage. The only thing you should be doing is taking it for a short ride and paying attention to see if there's any leaks coming from the seals. But I'm likely not going to see any oil because it's new seals, new dust caps, new retaining clip, and that's a 35-year-old fork. I don't think they ever replaced the seals because it was so rusted out. Make sure that every single bolt is on there tight. Make sure that the bolt underneath here is tight. Otherwise, there's going to be oil flowing out. Make sure you tighten these on both sides. Otherwise, the front brakes need to be tight again. But most people are not going to have issues with that. This is a mess routing the cables for the brakes. I'm going to be working on that. But otherwise, this should be good for another 10 years. Alright guys, that's how you do the fork seals on the 85 Honda Shadow. Thanks for watching.
Jeez, look at the butt on that.
Yeah. He must work out.